King Charles just said something about Filipinos that will totally surprise you. But before we get into it, let's take a moment to think. To understand why this is so important, you need to know the history behind it. You won't believe what he said. It wasn't just a simple comment, it was strong, surprising, and very personal. Most people think the British royal family has nothing to do with the Philippines, but that's not true at all. Their connection goes way back and isn't just about politics. It includes surprising events, royal trips, and hidden ties. Let's go back to the 1700s, specifically to the year 1762, when the world was caught in the 7 Years' War. This was a huge war that spread across Europe, North and South America, West Africa, India, and even Southeast Asia. But this wasn't just any war, it was the first true world war. Long before the big wars of the 1900s that most people know about. At that time, the Philippines was controlled by Spain. The British didn't invade just for land. They wanted power and trade. Their goal was to weaken Spain's influence around the world and take over the valuable Manila galleon trade route. This trade route made Spain rich by connecting Asia and the Americas. It allowed goods like porcelain, silk, and spices to travel from China through Manila and across the Pacific to Mexico. A huge British fleet arrives at the shores of Manila on September 24, 1762. They believed that capturing Manila would not only weaken the Spanish Empire, but also give them big trade opportunities in Asia. The Spanish leaders tried to defend the city, but in just 10 days, Manila was defeated. On October 5th, 1762, the British officially took control. This was a shocking victory that surprised both Asia and Europe. And guess who was ruling at the time? The British brought 13 warships, over 6,000 soldiers, and powerful cannons lined up along the coast. The people of Manila had never seen anything like it before. Things got even more intense because the British didn't just walk into Manila and take control peacefully. Instead, the takeover was messy, full of tension, and violent. For the next 20 months, the city was stuck between two powerful sides. The British controlled Manila and the nearby port of Cavite, but the rest of the Philippines was still under Spanish and Filipino rule. King Charles III, who would later be known for losing the American colonies in the Revolutionary War, had already helped expand King George III's empire all the way to the Philippines. In the countryside, Filipino revolutionaries and Spanish soldiers refused to give up and started fighting back using guerrilla warfare. At the same time, secret meetings, power struggles, and cultural exchanges were happening within the British forces. Even though the British ruled Manila for only 20 months, they left behind a surprising impact. Two British commanders, along with their soldiers, interacted with the local people, leading to lasting effects. During this time, some English words made their way into the local language, especially words related to trade and the military. Spanish was still the main colonial language, but early English terms began to spread. But here's an even bigger twist. Some Filipino families today can trace their roots back to the British occupation. British soldiers and sailors didn't just fight, they also lived in Manila and formed relationships with local women. This created a lasting connection, with Filipino-British descendants still present today. Some even carry names with British origins, like Drake and Dway, and the word bundak, meaning mountain, might have British ties from this short but impactful period. But this short time in history left a big impact. Here's another interesting fact. British forces took many valuable treasures from Manila during their rule. They looted religious artifacts, books, and even precious metals. Some historians believe that rare Filipino manuscripts from the 1700s are still hidden in archives in London today. If the British had such strong control, why didn't they stay? That's where international politics come in. By 1764, the 7 Years' War was ending, and under the Treaty of Paris, Britain agreed to give Manila back to Spain in exchange for more valuable territories in places like North America and the Caribbean. In the long run, Manila wasn't important enough for them to keep. So after nearly 2 years, the British packed up and left. However, the effects of their time in Manila lasted much longer. It's surprising to think that King Charles III's ancestors once ruled the city. Even though the British occupation was short, its impact is still felt today in ways many people don't realize. And guess what? This wasn't the only time the British royal family had connections with the Philippines. There's even more to this fascinating story, from royal visits to unexpected alliances. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's talk about the current king, King Charles III, who is not like most other kings. He has always followed his own way. Charles is known for being different, and some even say he is the most outspoken king Britain has had in a long time. While past royals mostly stuck to tradition, Charles has never been afraid to share his thoughts. Most people imagine a king who always smiles politely and gives carefully planned speeches. But Charles has never been like that. Even when his words caused controversy, he always spoke his mind. Back in 1970, long before plastic pollution became a global concern, Charles warned about climate change in a speech. He once said that the Earth is our home, but it does not belong to us. For years, he has supported organic farming and clean energy. Some people criticized him for being too political, but he didn't stop. The truth is, behind his calm and thoughtful personality, he is a man with strong beliefs. And that's where the Filipinos come in. His recent words, once again, proved that he isn't afraid to say what he thinks. For many years, Filipino workers, especially those in healthcare, have played an important role in British society. There are more than 200,000 Filipinos living and working in the UK today, many of them as nurses, caregivers, and domestic workers. Charles knows this very well. In fact, he has seen it with his own eyes. When his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, was getting older, many elderly people, including members of the royal family, were cared for by Filipino nurses. Behind the scenes, Filipino caregivers became an important part of royal life. There is even a story about how Charles personally thanked a group of Filipino nurses who worked very hard during the pandemic. One nurse who was there said that the future king shook their hands and told them, "I don't know how we would manage without you." This was not a big public event. There were no cameras, no media, just a simple and sincere moment showing a king who truly appreciated their efforts. But Charles doesn't just thank people in private. When he sees something unfair, he speaks up, even if it causes controversy. During the worst part of the pandemic, while most world leaders focused only on their own people, Charles made sure to recognize the sacrifices of migrant workers. And when it comes to Filipinos in the UK, he has always spoken openly about their hard work and contributions. At a charity event supporting healthcare workers, he made sure to highlight their efforts once again. According to Charles, the gratitude we owe cannot be measured. He believes we must appreciate those who care for the elderly and sick, especially the Filipino community, whose hard work and kindness are truly special. His words stood out not just because they were thoughtful, but because they were rare. Let's be honest, migrant workers are often ignored. Many world leaders overlook their contributions. But King Charles III is not just another public figure. As a king, his words carry importance, and he is not afraid to say what he sees. His recognition of Filipinos' contributions is more than just a polite gesture. It is a meaningful acknowledgement from the highest level of British society. For many Filipinos working far from their families, his words mean a lot. They are not just earning money, they are making sacrifices every day. For a Filipino nurse in London, hearing the King of England recognize their hard work is a great honor. Simply put, when King Charles speaks about us, it makes us feel seen. In 2023, it's not just about words, it's about knowing that our struggles are recognized. Being away from home is never easy. To show his support, Charles backed a project that provides free mental health care for Filipino healthcare workers facing burnout. This action matched his words and proved his commitment. Although King Charles III's leadership is still evolving, one thing is clear: he is shaping a new kind of monarchy. One that doesn't just represent the rich and powerful, but also embraces diversity and respects human dignity. This raises an interesting question. What else did King Charles say about Filipinos? The occasion was a formal event attended by world leaders, cultural figures, and members of the Filipino community in London. Charles isn't just a leader who stays silent. He wants to create change. part of that means recognizing the hardworking people who keep his country running, including Filipinos, who quietly contribute to British society in many ways. The room was filled with anticipation as guests expected polite words and formal greetings. But when King Charles stepped onto the stage, he surprised everyone. Before speaking, he paused and looked directly at the Filipino guests. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he spoke about the strength, kindness, and dedication of the Filipino people, qualities the world could learn from. But he didn't stop there. He also honored the millions of Filipino workers who take care of families worldwide, including in the UK. For many years, Filipino workers, especially nurses and caregivers, have been the foundation of many British homes. Today, more than 300,000 Filipinos live and work in the UK, many of whom have left their own families behind to take care of others. Here was King Charles himself, not just noticing their hard work, but openly appreciating their sacrifices. One Filipino nurse in the audience later shared, "I never imagined a king would recognize what we do. It finally felt like we were seen." Then, King Charles suddenly made the room go quiet.